Hey guys, back for another installment of the Power of Positive Thinking series here. Now, I apologize in advance if you hear some noise in the background because my building decided that they were going to replace the roof today, or probably like for the next month. So my videos might be a little bit noisy lately. So try to ignore that. Anyway, so if you haven't been following this series, I'll just give you a real quick recap yet again. That I read the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was very helpful, and there was a lot of very actionable steps in the book. And so I decided that, since there are so many things that you can do to take action on this stuff, there's so many exercises in the book, I'd go over one per week, one specific exercise per week that I'm going to commit to myself every day of the week to focus on that. Sometimes it's something that you do once, some affirmations or something like that. And so I'm going to do it every day for the rest of the week, and I invite you to follow along, because if you can discipline your mind into such a position that you are thinking positively instead of thinking negatively, which is kind of the default state, then you'll bring about much greater results in your life in multiple different ways. So the passage I got for you today actually is pretty long. Usually I just take a snippet, but this one I kind of want to read the whole thing because I think it's really good. Here we go. If you are thinking thoughts of defeat, I urge you to rid yourself of such thoughts. For as you think defeat, you tend to get it. Adopt the I don't believe in defeat attitude. I want to tell you about some people who have put this philosophy into effect with excellent results, and shall explain the techniques and formulas which they used successfully. If you read these incidents carefully and thoughtfully, and believe as they did, and think positively, and put these techniques into operation, you too can overcome defeats which at the present moment may seem inevitable. I hope you are not like an obstacle man in quotes, of whom I was told. He was called an obstacle man because, regardless of whatever suggestion was advanced, his mind instantly went to all possible obstacles in connection with it. But he met his match and learned a lesson which helped him to change his negative attitude. It came about in the following manner. So, by the way, my note here, if you find yourself reflected in this, if you see that you are an obstacle man or an obstacle woman, maybe this is for you. And I'm not judging you, because this is where I was coming from. I was definitely an obstacle person, where I noticed the obstacles and everything and didn't really have very much faith in being able to do it. Okay, back to the text. The directors of his firm had a project under consideration which involved considerable expense and some definite hazards, as well as success possibilities. In the discussions regarding this venture, the obstacle man would invariably say, and always with a scholarly air, invariably this type acts wise, probably a cover-up for inner doubt feelings. Now, just a moment. Let's consider the obstacles involved. I'm going to give you another note here. It's very interesting because I was thinking exactly the same thing before I read it, that the people who are always negative, who are always pointing out the obstacles, who are always pointing out the reasons why you should not take action, why you should not follow your dreams, etc., 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 love to paint themselves as the intelligent person, the responsible person, the person who's rational, who's using common sense, the only person who's using his brain, etc., 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 etc. So don't fall for it. People love to paint themselves in that light because it makes them feel good about themselves or makes them feel better about themselves, but it does not mean that they actually are more reasonable or more intelligent or more rational or any of those things. Okay, anyway, back to the text. Another man who said very little, but who was respected by his associates for his ability and achievements and for a certain indomitable quality which characterized him, presently spoke up and asked, "Why do you constantly emphasize the obstacles in this proposition instead of the possibilities?" "Because," replied the obstacle man, "to be intelligent, one must always be realistic, and it is a fact that there are certain definite obstacles in connection with this project. What attitude would you take towards these obstacles, may I ask? The other man unhesitatingly replied, What attitude would I take toward these obstacles? Why, I would just remove them. That's all, and then I would forget them. But, said the obstacle man, that is easier said than done. You say you would remove them, and then you would forget them. May I ask if you have any technique for removing obstacles and for forgetting them that the rest of us have never discovered? A slow smile came over the face of the other man as he said, Son, I have spent my entire life removing obstacles, and I never yet saw one that could not be removed, provided you have enough faith and guts and were willing to work. Since you want to know how it's done, I will show you. He then reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. Under the glass window was a card on which were written some words. He shoved the wallet across the table and said, There, son, read that. That is my formula, and don't give me the song and dance that it won't work either. I know better from experience. The obstacle man picked up the wallet and with a strange look on his face read the words to himself. Read them out loud, urged the owner of the wallet. This is what he read in a slow, dubious voice. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Philippians 4:13. The owner of the wallet put it back in his pocket and said, I have lived a long time, and I have faced a lot of difficulties in my time, but there is power in those words, actual power, and with them you can remove any obstacle. He said this with confidence, and everybody knew he meant it. This positiveness, together with the facts of his experience, which were known to all, for he was a remarkable man who had overcome many odds, and because of the further fact that he was not in any sense holier than thou, made his words convincing to the men around the table. At any rate, there was no more negative talk. The project was put into operation, and despite difficulties and risks, turned out successfully. The technique used by this man is based on the primary fact about an obstacle, which is, don't be afraid of it. Practice believing that God is with you, and that in combination with Him, you have the power to handle it. So the first thing to do about an obstacle is simply to stand up to it and not complain about it or whine under it, but forthrightly attack it. Don't go crawling through life on your hands and knees half defeated. Stand up to your obstacles and do something about them. You will find that they haven't half the strength you think they have. A friend in England sent me a book by Winston Churchill entitled Maxims and Reflections. In this book, Churchill tells of the British General Tudor, who commanded a division of the British Fifth Army, which faced the Great German assault in March 1918. The odds were heavily against him, but General Tudor knew how to meet an apparently immovable and undefeatable obstacle. His method was simple. He merely stood and let the obstacle break on him, and he in turn broke the obstacle. Here's what Churchill said about General Tudor. This is a very great sentence, and it is filled with power. The impression I had of Tudor was of an iron peg, hammered into the frozen ground, immovable. General Tudor knew how to stand up to an obstacle. Just stand up to it, that's all, and don't give way under it, and it will finally break. You will break it. Something has to break, and it won't be you. It will be the obstacle. You can do this when you have faith. Faith in God and faith in yourself. Faith is the chief quality you need. It is enough. In fact, it is more than enough. So that's it. That was kind of a lot. I hope you found that helpful. But the main points here, I wanted to go over this because I thought the stories were really good. But stand up to the obstacles. Don't give them more power than they need, right? Recognize that you, as a child of God, with God on your side, have the strength to surmount any obstacle that might come before you. And if you have that faith, then you can have the perseverance that it takes, you can have the willpower that it takes, you can have the strength that it takes to beat those obstacles. Now, I know there's some people on my channel that complain that I talk about God all the time, and I talk about faith all the time, but that's necessary. That's an essential component. You just cannot throw that out. right? I mean, that's like the trying to have faith in anything without a belief in God is a fool's errand. It's just not going to work. It's like building a house on the sand. It's like firing a cannon from a rowboat, right? You don't have any foundation for it. People say, oh, well, you don't need to believe in God, you can believe in yourself. But it begs the question, why on earth would you believe in yourself? Right? You're just a collection of randomly accumulated dust that happened to evolve into a sentient being that's going to return to dust. Why on earth would you believe that you have any special capability? Why would you ever believe that you are capable of doing anything based on that foundation? You're not going to. You're going to say, you can affirm to yourself 1,000 times, I am great, I am powerful, I am strong, I am wise, blah, 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 blah. But if you believe that you are a random collection of cells based on mutations with no intelligent cause, you have no basis for the things that you are trying to affirm to yourself, and you are necessarily going to fail, right? Because your subconscious mind is going to be laughing at you. You're going to be saying, I'm strong, I'm powerful, and your subconscious mind is going to say, dude, you're a random accumulation of cells, you're meaningless, you have no power at all. Right, so you have to have a basis. If you want to have faith, and you need to have faith, by the way, because if you don't have faith, then you're not going to be able to have any energy. You're not going to be able to have any perseverance, right? If you're trying to do something difficult, and you're encountering obstacles, you need to have the faith that it's possible to do. You need to have the faith that you have the resources at your disposal in order to be able to do it. And if you do not have any basis for that faith, you're going to fail. You're going to give up. You're not going to have any energy. You're not going to have any perseverance. You're going to you're going to be completely useless. So I just want to make that point that you can try to skip the foundation. You can try to skip believing in God because you've just listened to the media that tells you that believing in God is idle superstition, which, by the way, they tell you that for a particular agenda. Right, that if people don't have a basis, if they don't have a basis, if they are blowing in the wind without any foundation, then they're much easier to manipulate. They're much easier to control. That's why every oppressive regime in the history of the world has done their best to either eliminate or subvert religion. So that's, I mean, if you buy into that propaganda, then you're going to have no personal power at all. And you're going to fold whenever there's an obstacle. So that part is pretty important. And if you don't already have that faith in God, I highly recommend that that's where you start. And it's not something that you just you snap your fingers and all of a sudden you believe in God, right? This is something that you study, that you recognize. One of the best things you can do is meditate, right? Because then you can recognize the biases that you already have in your mind. You can recognize that the things that you believe, most of the things that you believe, and this goes for everybody, by the way, including religious people, most of the things you believe for not really very good reasons, right? You believe because when you were 4 years old, somebody told you this. And maybe your parents believed this, and they told you over and over and over again when you're a child, and so it's beaten into your head, and that's why you believe it. Or maybe you believe it because that's what school told you, or believe it because that's what MTV told you when you were a teenager. You know, you have all these beliefs that are not very well founded. So if you can have the humility and get that distance where you recognize that you are not your beliefs, and that perhaps some of the beliefs you have are not serving you, and you can be willing to discard those beliefs and actually search out better ones, ones with more solid foundation, one that you can actually defend with something better than, oh, that's just what I was told. Well, you're going to have a much more solid faith, right? You're going to have a solid faith rather than a weak faith, and you're going to, I believe, come to the conclusion that there is a lot more to the nature of reality than what we're told by societal propaganda that wants us to be atheist materialists, in essence. And so I know I'm going off on a huge tangent here, but yeah, that's it. Have that faith in God. Have that faith that you can overcome any obstacle. And of course, the reason that you have that faith is because you believe that you are a child of God, you believe that you have the support of God, and you believe that you have the attributes of God Himself within you as a creature of God. Right? That's why you have that faith. And if you have that faith, then the only rational thing to believe is that you can overcome any obstacle. And then when you believe that you can overcome any obstacle, you have more energy, you have more positivity, you have more willpower, you're willing to keep going, you're willing to keep working at it through no matter how difficult it is, no matter how many times you keep banging up against the same obstacle, you know, I'm a child of God, I am eventually going to get over this obstacle, and then you do it. So that's it for the week. My homework for myself and what I recommend for you is that anytime you encounter an obstacle in anything that you're trying to do, minimize the obstacle and recognize that you have incredible power and that you are capable of overcoming that obstacle. So that's it for today. I'll see you guys next week.